In your first week of class, as part of the origins debate, there's an interesting sort of BBC recording where they have not a panel, a crowd of historians talking about the war. But they also there's one where they have a panel of 4 historians talking about the war. And one of the historians was Professor Gary Sheffield, who's written the major biography of Douglas Haig, who really is my go-to guy when it comes to the Battle of the Somme. And there was a discussion near the end of the hour 40 minutes about the breaking of armies, how one of the results of the terrible disasters of 1916 was in 1917 the troops simply wouldn't take it anymore. In April of 1917, when French soldiers are ordered up out of their trenches in what they saw as yet another futile offensive, they refused. And mutiny spread along the entire French line. The Germans were entirely unaware. Had the Germans been aware that the French army had mutinied, they could have walked right through the French lines and been to Paris. This French mutiny is ultimately settled when several mutinous regiments will experience what was called a decimation. That is, they will be hauled together. Every 10th man, it's collective judgment. Every 10th man would be chosen, and then they would be shot by the rest of the battalion, the rest of the company. Excuse me. This decimations is an old Roman thing. It did restore order. The mutinies came to an end. The mutinies came to an end also because Philippe Pétain, the hero of Verdun, was sent around the front lines to talk not just to commanders but to men, and his word was, "We will wait for the Americans. No more offensives, no more useless dying." In April of 1917, the United States had declared war on Germany, and the French decided, we will wait for the Americans to show up. They will start dying for us. Oh well. The French mutiny was put down. The Germans will experience strikes in the weapons sector. They will experience a mutiny of the North Sea Fleet at Kiel and Bremerhaven and Wilhelmshaven, the North Sea ports. Of course, there will be difficulties in the Italian army. The most spectacular of the mutinies takes place in Russia, in Petrograd. We talk about the Russian Revolution, but in so many ways, to me, I see it as a mutiny of the army, where the professional officer corps has been more than decimated, has really been wiped out. You have a peasant army, and they simply won't take it anymore. And in February, March our calendar, 1917, the Russian army will revolt, the Tsar will abdicate, and a provisional government will be put in place to continue the war. But it can't, because this is really a mutiny against the war. In this panel discussion, Professor Sheffield said that the British Army was the one army not to break in 1917. Now, the German army didn't break. The German Navy did, but the German army didn't break. But the British army didn't break. And when the host said, well, why did this not happen? He said, well, by 1917, the toffs who were taking the British, who were the junior officers who were leading the men all over the top, many of them were dead, and they'd been replaced by capable junior officers and NCOs based not on class but on capacity. And there was a great bond of trust between junior officers and men. Sounds good to me. That actually, I actually believe that happened. But the reality was that in 1917, people had simply had enough. The great offensives of 1916 had failed. It didn't work. Now, I talk about Professor Sheffield and the British. The Germans began in 1917 to refit. With the collapse of the Russians, the Germans knew they would have additional men available to launch an offensive in the West, hopefully in the early spring of 1918, before the Americans could arrive. And so part of what the German army did then in late 1917 was to retrofit for a new form of warfare using what they would call stormtrooper tactics and pulling units, holding the line and pulling units out to prepare them for this new style combat that they hoped would win the war. And I think one of the things that we found is that one of the things that happens in the war, men will spend time at the front, they will be pulled back for recreation and relaxation, and they will be retrained. So at any time, only 1/3 of the men are at the front, and others are either in the relaxation period or in the retraining period. And in every army, they've found that you can't just have sustained time at the front. And one of the ways to actually increase discipline and to increase morale is to bring men back and train, and we retrain them. We found that as people were doing multiple tours in Afghanistan and Iraq, that there not only is there a learning curve, you come back and you learn how to fight those sons of a bitches better the next time you're deployed, but also that there are morale questions involved. And so the Germans were able to maintain unit strength and integrity even as men are being traded out. So 1917, a year of collapse.